Lieutenant Tina had exactly 3 rules for surviving life aboard the Nebula's Promise. Keep your head down, fix what breaks, and never, under any circumstances, get involved in other people's drama. Simple, effective. Had kept her alive and employed for the better part of a decade bouncing between cargo vessels that smelled like recycled air and broken promises. So, naturally, the universe decided to laugh directly in her face. She'd just finished a double shift in the engine room, covered in enough grease to qualify as a new species, when she palmed open her quarters and found her bed occupied. Not by one creature, not by 2. By 3 full-sized Ralmec cubs, piled on top of each other like the galaxy's most dangerous game of Jenga. All of them sound asleep on her pillow. Her pillow. The memory foam one she'd hauled across 6 star systems. The one with the faded pillowcase covered in cartoon cats that she'd bought at a station market 8 years ago because it was on sale and made her laugh. The only thing in her entire quarters that actually mattered. Tina stood in the doorway, one eye twitching, trying to process the scene. The cubs were massive, even for their age. Nakri, the eldest at maybe 15 in human years, had her head buried in the pillow's center, her breathing deep and even. Molak, the middle child, had somehow wedged himself perpendicular across his sister's back, one paw dangling off the edge of the narrow bed. Little Pillin, the youngest, was curled into the smallest ball possible at the foot, her tail wrapped around Molak's leg like a fuzzy security rope. They looked peaceful, innocent even, which was hilarious, considering Ralmec were apex predators from a death world where the plants tried to eat you and the weather had a personal vendetta against anything with a pulse. Their adult forms stood over 8 feet tall, could bite through hull plating, and had reflexes that made professional fighters look like they were moving through syrup. Galactic society treated them with the kind of nervous respect usually reserved for armed warheads. And here were 3 of them, drooling on her pillow. Tina briefly considered her options. She could wake them up, which would probably result in startled predator cubs doing what startled predators do, which was absolutely nothing she wanted to deal with at the end of a 16-hour shift. She could call their guardian, Commander Ironesh, but that felt like tattling, and Tina had never been a snitch. She could sleep in the hallway, but her back already hated her enough without adding metal floor to the list of grievances. Or she could just deal with it. With a sigh that came from somewhere deep in her soul, Tina grabbed her spare blanket from the storage locker, rolled it into a makeshift pillow, and collapsed onto the floor beside her bed. The cubs didn't even twitch. She was asleep in 30 seconds, too exhausted to care that she'd just let 3 baby murder machines commandeer her sleeping space. When she woke up 6 hours later, the cubs were gone. Her pillow, however, had been relocated to the exact center of her floor, positioned with the kind of precision that suggested deliberate placement. Not tossed aside, not left in a heap. Carefully arranged, almost reverently, like some kind of textile shrine. Tina stared at it for a full minute, waiting for her brain to boot up enough to form an opinion about this situation. She came up empty. Fine. Whatever. Cubs were weird. She'd heard they had strange instincts, territorial behaviors that didn't always make sense to other species. Maybe this was some Ralmec thing she didn't understand and didn't need to. She picked up her pillow, put it back on her bed, and went to work. That night, same thing. She came back to her quarters, found the cubs in a slightly different configuration. This time Molek had claimed the pillow's center while his sisters flanked him. And they were out cold. Tina repeated her floor sleeping routine, too tired to mount a proper defense of her furniture. When she woke up, they were gone again. Pillow relocated to a new spot near the foot of her bed. still arranged with that same weird intentionality. This continued for 8 days. On day 9, Tina started noticing patterns, because if there's one thing you learn as a mechanic, it's that everything has a pattern. Nakri had the pillow on day 1, Moloch on day 2, Pillin on day 3, then back to Nakri on day 4, a rotation. They were taking turns, not fighting over it, not competing, taking turns. That was when she realized this wasn't random cub chaos. This was organized. This was a system. These 3 baby predators had invented a schedule for sleeping on her pillow, and they were sticking to it with the kind of discipline that would make military officers weep with envy. "Okay," Tina muttered to herself, standing in her doorway on day 10, watching Nakri's ears twitch in sleep. "Okay, this is officially weird." She needed information, which meant she needed Lickme. Lickme was the ship's linguistic officer, an Ofrani who looked like someone had given an octopus a graduate degree and a really bad attitude about pronouns. They were also the closest thing Tina had to a friend on board, mostly because Lickme didn't care about personal space, and Tina didn't care about social norms, which made them weirdly compatible. She found them in the mess hall the next morning, working through a plate of something that looked like it was still moving. "I need you to explain Ralmec behavior to me," Tina said, sliding into the seat across from them. Lickme's 3 primary eye stalks swiveled toward her. "Good morning to you too, Tina. How lovely to see you." "Yes, I slept well. Thank you for asking." "Cubs, pillow, my quarters. Explain." "You have a pillow emergency?" "I have a cub emergency that involves my pillow." Lickme's tentacles rippled in what Tina had learned to recognize as amusement. "The commander's charges have been visiting you?" "Visiting implies they leave at some point during the actual night. They're treating my bed like a hotel, and my pillow like a sacred artifact." Tina leaned forward. "They take turns, specific turns, in a repeating pattern. What does that mean?" The amusement disappeared from Lickme's posture. Their eye stalks went very still. "They're rotating access to your pillow?" "Yes." "In an established order?" "Yes." "And they're not fighting over it?" "Not even a little bit." Lickme was quiet for a moment, which was never a good sign. When they finally spoke, their voice had gone carefully neutral. "That's pack behavior. Advanced pack behavior." Tina felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Explain that in words that won't make me regret asking." Ralmec are scent-based social creatures. They identify family, safety, and territory through smell more than visual cues. When cubs are young, they bond to a primary caregiver's scent. It's instinctive, genetic, not something they control. "My pillow smells like me." Your pillow is saturated with your scent, yes. To them, it's functionally equivalent to you. Lickme's tentacles made a gesture that might have been a shrug. They've bonded to you as a safe presence. The rotation system means they're trying to share access without conflict, which suggests they all want proximity to your scent, but have agreed not to fight their siblings for it. They invented timeshare custody of my pillow. In essence, yes. Tina put her head in her hands. I just wanted to sleep. Well, congratulations. You're now the emotional support human for 3 apex predator cubs. Lickme resumed eating their still squirming breakfast. Could be worse. They could have bonded to your actual body instead of a proxy object. Then you'd never get rid of them. That's not comforting. I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to translate languages and enjoy watching your life spiral into chaos. You're a terrible friend. You came to me. That's on you. Tina left the mess hall with more questions than answers, and a growing suspicion that her nice, simple, drama-free life had just evaporated like water on a hull breach. That evening, she returned to her quarters with a plan. She was going to talk to the cubs, explain that while she appreciated whatever instinct had driven them to her pillow, they needed to find a new comfort object, something that belonged to them, something that wasn't hers. She walked in to find all 3 cubs awake, sitting in a semicircle around her pillow like it was a campfire, and they were about to tell ghost stories. They looked at her. She looked at them. "Hi," Tina said, "because what else do you say to 3 baby predators having a pillow convention in your bedroom?" "Hi, Tina," Pillin chirped. Her voice still had that high, kitten-like quality that made it hard to remember she could probably bite through a cargo crate if motivated. "We were waiting for you," Nakri added. "Molek said we should ask permission." "Permission for what?" Molek ducked his head, suddenly very interested in his own paws. "To keep coming here. Commander Ironesh says we should always ask before entering someone's space. We forgot to ask." Tina felt something in her chest do a weird little flip. These kids, these massive, dangerous kids, were sitting here looking guilty about a basic breach of etiquette. They could have ignored her entirely, could have kept sneaking in without ever acknowledging it. But instead, they'd waited up to ask permission retroactively. "Why my pillow?" she asked, keeping her voice gentle. "You have your own quarters, your own things." The 3 of them exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations that siblings everywhere seemed capable of. Finally, Nakri spoke. "It smells like safety." "Our quarters smell like ship," Pillin added. "Cold, metal, nothing." Molek nodded. "Your pillow smells like someone lives there, like home is supposed to smell. We don't remember what home smells like anymore." And there it was, the truth that Lickme's clinical explanation had missed. These weren't just cubs bonding to a scent. These were kids, far from their world, trying to find something familiar in a universe of strange. Her pillow, with its years of accumulated scent, its softness, its ridiculous cartoon cats, had become their anchor. Tina thought about her own childhood, station to station, vessel to vessel, never staying long enough to call anywhere home. That pillow had been her constant too, her one piece of continuity in a life of temporary spaces. She looked at the 3 cubs, at their hopeful faces and nervous tails, and felt her careful neutrality crumble like a poorly welded joint. "You can keep coming," she said, "but we're establishing ground rules." 3 sets of ears perked up. 1, you stick to your rotation. No fighting over who gets which night. 2, if I'm sleeping, you do not wake me up. I don't care if the ship is on fire. 3, you don't tell anyone else about this. I don't need the whole crew knowing I'm running a pillow timeshare for baby predators. "We can agree to those terms," Nakri said solemnly, like they were negotiating a treaty. "Good. Now get out. It's Pillin's night, apparently, and I need to sleep." Nakri and Molek scrambled for the door. Pillin stayed put, looking up at Tina with those huge, reflective eyes. "Thank you," the cub whispered, "for not making us leave." Tina's throat felt suspiciously tight. "Yeah, well, don't get used to it." But as she lay on her floor blanket that night, listening to Pillin's soft breathing from above, Tina had the uncomfortable realization that she'd just made a decision that was going to complicate her life in ways she couldn't even begin to predict. She was right. She just didn't know how right yet. 3 weeks into the pillow rotation, Tina had developed a new appreciation for the organizational skills of apex predators. The cubs never missed their scheduled nights, never swapped without consultation, never once violated the sacred order of Nakri, Molak, Pilian, repeat. It was almost disturbing how seriously they took it. What was more disturbing was how the rest of the crew had started to notice. "Your little friends are looking healthier," Commander Ironesh remarked one afternoon, finding Tina elbow-deep in a malfunctioning coolant pump. The Ralmech warrior was massive even by his species' standards, with scars that told stories Tina probably didn't want to hear. But his voice carried a warmth that always caught her off guard. "My little friends?" Tina didn't look up from her work, but her wrench slipped slightly. "The cubs, they've been calmer, more focused in their training, less prone to the homesickness that was affecting their performance." A pause. "I wonder what changed." Tina felt her face heat up. "Kids just needed time to adjust, probably." "Probably," Ironesh agreed, in a tone that suggested he knew exactly what was happening and found it entertaining. "Though Moloch did ask me yesterday if humans have territory-sharing instincts similar to Ralmech. Very specific question. Very random timing. Kids ask weird questions." "Indeed they do." Another pause. "For what it's worth, Lieutenant, whatever you're doing, it's working. They haven't been this settled since we left their homeworld." He left before Tina could formulate a response, which was probably for the best because she had no idea what to say. She wasn't doing anything except letting 3 oversized cats nap on her pillow. That wasn't parenting. That wasn't mentorship. That was just basic logistics management. But the changes Ironesh mentioned were real. She'd noticed them herself during the communal meals, where crew members of various species attempted to tolerate each other's food choices. The cubs sat together now, without the previous tension, their movements synchronized in ways they hadn't been before. Pelin had stopped picking at her meals. Molech had stopped that nervous tail-lashing thing he did when stressed. Nakri smiled more, which on a Ralmech face was slightly terrifying but oddly endearing. Tina tried not to think too hard about what that meant. Then Captain Quilnop got involved, and thinking became unavoidable. Quilnop was an Antherian, which meant he looked vaguely like a praying mantis had merged with the accountant and developed strong opinions about paperwork. He ran the nebula's promise with efficiency that bordered on obsessive, and he had exactly 0 tolerance for anything that deviated from standard protocol, which made his appearance at Tina's workshop door, antennae twitching with bureaucratic distress. A very bad sign. "Lieutenant Tina, we need to discuss an irregularity in crew quarters monitoring." Tina set down her plasma welder. "Monitoring what now?" "Standard. Occupancy sensors indicate that the Ralmech cubs have been frequenting your quarters outside of normal social interaction parameters." Quilnop's mandibles clicked in what might have been disapproval. "This presents concerns regarding proper boundary maintenance and protocol adherence." "They visit sometimes. We talk. Is that against regulations?" "Visit. Yes. Appropriate. Sleep in your quarters while you are present? Less appropriate. Raises questions about supervision standards and cross-species interaction guidelines." Tina felt ice settle in her gut. "You want to ban them from my quarters. I want to ensure all crew members, especially juveniles, maintain proper behavioral boundaries. The cubs have guardianship under Commander Ironesh. Their presence in your personal space, repeatedly, overnight, suggests a relationship dynamic that may not be properly authorized." "We're not doing anything wrong." "I'm certain that's true. However, perception matters. Protocol matters. I'll be implementing a restriction effective immediately. Cubs are to remain in designated juvenile quarters during sleep cycles unless accompanied by their appointed guardian." "You can't just—" "I can, and I am. This is for everyone's benefit, Lieutenant. Quillnop's antennae did that thing they did when he thought a conversation was over. I'm sure you understand. He left. Tina stood there, wrench in hand, trying to decide if throwing it at the wall would help or just damage equipment she'd have to repair later. She didn't throw the wrench. She did, however, spend the rest of her shift in a state of simmering anger that made her co-workers give her a wide berth. That night, she returned to her quarters to find her pillow exactly where she'd left it on her bed. No cubs, no warmth, no soft breathing from small bodies trying to feel safe in a universe that was too big and too strange. Just an empty room and a pillow that suddenly felt like evidence of something she'd lost without fully understanding she had it. 2 days later, the complaints started. The cubs weren't eating properly. Pillin had stopped talking during meals. Molak had snapped at another juvenile crew member during training, which was completely unlike him. Nakri had withdrawn into sullen silence, her performance scores dropping noticeably. Ironesh showed up at Tina's workshop on the 3rd day, looking less amused than usual. The captain's protocol adjustment is not having the intended effect, he said without preamble. Not my problem. Tina kept her eyes on her work. I'm just following orders. You're sulking. I don't sulk. I comply efficiently with bureaucratic nonsense while privately resenting it. The cubs are asking about you. Tina's hands stilled. What are they asking? Why you don't want them anymore. If they did something wrong. Whether humans bond differently than they thought. Ironesh's voice was carefully neutral, but something underneath it had teeth. Pillin asked me yesterday if your pillow stopped smelling like safety. I didn't have a good answer. This wasn't my choice. I know. I also know you could request a meeting with the captain. Explain what's actually happening. As could I. He paused. But I wanted to understand something first. What was happening in your quarters, Tina? The cubs won't explain it clearly. They say it's private, sacred. Those are significant words in Ralmec culture. Tina set down her tools, looked at the commander directly. They were sleeping on my pillow, taking turns. That's it. No grand conspiracy, no protocol violation. Just 3 kids who found something that smelled like home and made a system so they could share it without fighting. Your pillow. My pillow. And you allowed this. I was too tired to stop them the first time. Then it seemed cruel to take it away. Tina crossed her arms. They weren't hurting anything. They were just being kids. Ironesh made a sound low in his throat, something between a hum and a growl. Do you understand what you did? From their perspective? Lickme said something about scent bonding and pack behavior. Lickme gave you technical accuracy. Let me give you cultural context. The commander moved closer, his presence filling the small workshop. Ralmec cubs choose their pack. Genetics matter less than emotional bonds. When they find someone who makes them feel safe, they test that safety. They offer vulnerability, wait to see if it's accepted or rejected. You accepted. You let them into your space, your den, while you slept. You let them near you at your most vulnerable. Then, you didn't punish them for it. Why would I punish them for sleeping? Exactly. You treated their instinctive trust as normal, as acceptable, as something worth protecting with rotation schedules and ground rules. Ironesh's tail moved in a pattern Tina couldn't read. You passed a test you didn't know you were taking, and now those cubs consider you pack. Removing access to your scent, abruptly, without explanation, reads as rejection, as abandonment. Tina felt something crack in her chest. I didn't abandon them. The captain made a rule. The cubs don't understand captain's rules. They understand that you were there, and now you're not. That you accepted them, and now you don't. That's not fair. No, Ironesh agreed. It's not. But it's real. Tina looked at her hands, covered in grease and calluses from years of fixing things that broke. She'd always been good at fixing things. Mechanical things. Logical things. Things that followed rules and made sense. Kids weren't mechanical. Bonds weren't logical. And sometimes the rules were wrong. "What do I do?" she asked quietly. "That depends. Do you want them in your life, or were you just being polite?" It should have been an easy question. Tina had built her entire existence around not getting attached, not collecting complications, not letting anything matter, enough to hurt when it inevitably went away. But she thought about Pillin's whispered thank you, Molek's careful question about permission, Nakri's solemn treaty negotiation. 3 kids who'd chosen her for reasons she still didn't fully understand, who'd invented a whole system just to share something that made them feel less alone. "I want them in my life," Tina said. "I just don't know how to fix this." Ironesh's expression shifted into something that might have been a smile. "Then let's go have a conversation with our captain about what proper supervision actually looks like." Captain Quilnop's office smelled like recycled air and stress, which Tina supposed was appropriate for someone whose entire personality revolved around maintaining order in the chaos of deep space. The captain sat behind his desk, mandibles clicking softly as he reviewed data on his console, while Tina and Ironesh stood on the other side like students called to the principal's office. Except Ironesh didn't look particularly concerned about being there, and Tina was rapidly running out of patience for bureaucratic nonsense. "Commander, Lieutenant, I assume this is about the recent behavioral issues with the cubs," Quilnop said without looking up. "I've been monitoring the situation. Adjustments often create temporary difficulties. They'll adapt." "They're not adapting," Ironesh said flatly. "They're deteriorating. Pillin hasn't eaten a full meal in 3 days. Molak nearly injured another crew member during routine training. Nakri's academic performance has dropped by 30%. These aren't adjustments. These are distress signals. Homesickness is unfortunately common among juvenile crew members. It passes with time and proper structure." "This isn't homesickness," Tina interjected. "This is you breaking something that was actually working." Quilnop's antennae swiveled toward her, finally giving her his full attention. "Lieutenant, I understand you may have formed an attachment to the cubs, but proper boundaries exist for important reasons. Allowing juveniles unsupervised access to adult crew quarters creates liability concerns and sets concerning precedents. They weren't unsupervised. I was there. You were asleep. That's functionally unsupervised. By that logic, parents are never supervising their kids because sleep exists. You are not their parent." The words hung in the air like a failed atmosphere seal, cold and sharp. Tina felt them land somewhere in her chest, felt the truth of them and the strange pain that truth carried. "No," she said quietly. "I'm not. I'm just the person whose pillow helped them feel less alone in a metal box flying through space. I'm just the person they trusted enough to sleep near. I'm just the person who apparently accidentally convinced 3 baby predators that safety was a thing that still existed in the universe." Quilnop's mandibles went still. "Your pillow?" "Yes, my pillow. The one with the cartoon cats. The one I've had for 8 years. The one that apparently smells enough like stability that 3 homesick kids invented a rotation schedule just to share access to it." Tina crossed her arms. They weren't breaking protocol. They were coping. And they were doing it in the least disruptive way possible. No fights, no drama, just 3 kids taking turns sleeping on a piece of foam that made them feel better. I was not informed about a pillow. You didn't ask about specifics. You saw cubs in my quarters and assumed something inappropriate. You made a ruling based on optics, not facts. Ironesh made that low rumbling sound again. Captain, with respect, you disrupted a pack bonding process. In Ralmec culture, that's not a minor social adjustment. That's psychological damage. Those cubs offered trust to Lieutenant Tina, and she accepted it. Your intervention reads as a rejection of that bond, and cubs don't process rejection the way adult logic suggests they should. Pack bonding? Quillnop's antennae twitched rapidly. Lieutenant Tina initiated a formal Ralmec bonding process? No, Tina and Ironesh said simultaneously. Tina continued. I let some kids sleep on my pillow because I was too tired to argue, and they looked comfortable. That's it. I didn't know it meant anything beyond basic comfort-seeking behavior. But it does mean something, Quillnop said slowly. In their culture. Yes, Ironesh confirmed. And now that the bond has formed, breaking it without proper context causes genuine harm. Not theoretical liability issues. Actual, measurable psychological distress. The captain was quiet for a long moment, his compound eyes reflecting light in ways that made his expression impossible to read. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its rigid formality. I was attempting to prevent complications, to maintain clear boundaries that protect everyone involved. I understand that, Tina said. But you can't protect people from caring about each other. You can only make it harder for them to do it safely. Safely, Quillnop repeated. You believe allowing the cubs continued access to your quarters is the safe option. I believe that 3 kids who've been sleeping better, eating better, and performing better when they have access to something that comforts them should be allowed to keep that access. Yes, under whatever supervision protocols make you comfortable. But taking it away completely isn't protecting anyone. It's just making everyone miserable for no good reason. Quillnop's mandibles clicked in what Tina had learned to recognize as active thinking. Commander Ironesh, as the Cubs' appointed guardian, what is your assessment of this situation? Lieutenant Tina has been more effective at providing emotional stability for the Cubs than I have, Ironesh said bluntly. Not because I'm failing in my duties, but because she offers something I cannot. I'm their instructor, their protector, their connection to Ralmec culture and expectations. She's just someone who let them feel small and scared without judgment. They need both. And you support continuing this pillow arrangement? I support whatever keeps those cubs healthy and functional. If that's a rotation schedule for sleeping on a human's cushion with cartoon cats on it, then yes, I support that. Tina blinked. She hadn't realized Ironesh had noticed the cartoon cats. That was either impressive observation or mildly concerning attention to detail. Quillnop stood, moving to the large viewport that dominated one wall of his office. Outside, stars streaked past in the distorted patterns of faster-than-light travel, a reminder that they were all just fragile creatures in a metal shell, pretending they had control over anything. I became captain because I value order, he said quietly. Structure. Clear rules that prevent chaos. But perhaps I've been applying structure designed for equipment to situations involving people. Or, in this case, cubs. He turned back to face them. I'm going to rescind the quarters restriction. However, I want formal documentation of the arrangement, scheduled times, Ironesh's acknowledgement of the situation, regular check-ins to ensure the cub's well-being is actually improving, not just appearing to improve. Tina felt something loosen in her chest. I can do that. And Lieutenant, I want your acknowledgement that you understand the responsibility you're taking on. These aren't pets. They're future warriors of a species that takes bonds very seriously. If this continues, you're becoming part of their lives in ways that may have long-term implications. I understand. Do you? Quillnop's antennae angled toward her. Because I'm not certain I do, and I've been studying interspecies cultural dynamics for 20 years. You've stumbled into something significant, and significance has consequences. Then I'll deal with the consequences when they arrive, Tina said. Right now, I just want those kids to stop thinking I abandoned them. Quillnop nodded slowly. Very well. You're dismissed, both of you. And Lieutenant? For what it's worth, I apologize. My intentions were protective, but my execution was flawed. Apology accepted, Tina said. Can I go now? I have 3 cubs to find and a pillow schedule to reinstate. Go. Tina didn't need to be told twice. She was out the door before Ironesh, her boots clanging against the metal corridor as she headed toward the juvenile quarters. She found the cubs in their assigned room, all 3 of them curled together on Nakri's bunk in a way that looked more defensive than comfortable. They looked up when she entered, ears perking with cautious hope. So, Tina said, leaning against the doorframe. Apparently, I made a mistake. Turns out the captain and I had a miscommunication about proper supervision protocols and emotional support furniture. Emotional support furniture, Molak repeated, confused. My pillow. The captain didn't understand what was happening. He thought he was protecting you. He was wrong. I explained. He fixed it. You can come back. Pillin made a sound that was half chirp, half sob. Really? Really. Same rules as before. Same rotation. Same everything. Except now it's officially documented and approved, which means no one can say it's against protocol. You fought for us, Nakri said softly. You argued with the captain. I explained the situation. That's different from fighting. You stood up for us, the cub insisted, even though it would have been easier to just let it go. Tina shifted uncomfortably. Yeah, well, you guys were miserable. I don't like watching kids be miserable when I can do something about it. So I did something about it. The 3 cubs exchanged one of their silent sibling conversations, then moved as one unit toward her. Tina suddenly found herself with 3 sets of arms wrapped around her waist, 3 heads pressed against her torso, and a distinct feeling that she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Thank you, they chorused, and Tina felt that crack in her chest widen into something that might have been affection, might have been terror, and was definitely going to complicate her nice, simple life in ways she was absolutely not prepared for. Yeah, you're welcome. Now who has pillow duty tonight? Me, Pillin said, pulling back with a grin that showed too many teeth. And I'm not giving up my turn even if the ship explodes. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, Tina muttered. But as she watched the 3 cubs race ahead of her toward her quarters, their earlier distress forgotten in the joy of restored routine, she couldn't help thinking that Quillnop had been right about one thing. Consequences were definitely coming. She just had no idea how right that prediction would be. The Ralmec diplomatic ship arrived without warning, which meant someone up the chain of command had decided surprises built character. Tina was elbow-deep in a malfunctioning coolant pump when the ship-wide announcement crackled overhead. All crew to stations. Diplomatic vessel incoming. Protocol Alpha 9 in effect. Protocol Alpha 9 meant VIP arrival. Important enough to make Captain Quillnop nervous. Tina wiped her hands, which did nothing to remove the grease, and headed toward the docking bay purely out of curiosity. The bay was already crowded with crew members attempting to look professional. Iranesh stood near the airlock, posture military straight in a way Tina had never seen. The cubs were with him, uncomfortable in formal wrappings that probably counted as ceremonial dress. "Who's the VIP?" Tina asked, sliding next to Likmi. "High Matriarch Nalisha, mother of your pillow rotation committee. Also, one of the most politically powerful Ralmech in the sector. Also famously overprotective and zero tolerance for perceived threats to her offspring. I haven't threatened anyone. Tell that to the schedule posted on your door." Tina's head whipped around. "What schedule?" "The one the cubs made, color-coded. Pillin added drawings. Very official. I'm going to kill them." Too late. She's docking. The airlock cycled open. High Matriarch Nalisha was 8 feet of pure muscle, wrapped in ceremonial armor that probably cost more than the ship. Scars covered visible skin, each one a story Tina didn't want to hear. Her eyes, the same reflective gold as her cubs, swept the crew with predatory assessment. "Commander Ironesh," her voice carried absolute authority. "Status report on my cubs. Thriving, Matriarch. Training ahead of schedule. Integration successful. Healthy, focused, adapting well. Interesting." Her gaze moved to the cubs. "You will greet me properly." The 3 performed some complex gesture involving synchronized movements and vocalizations. Very formal. Very different from the chaotic pile Tina usually encountered. "You've grown," Nalisha said, voice softening fractionally. "Tell me what you've learned." Tina expected combat training or cultural studies. Instead, Pilin chirped, "We learned about pack bonding with humans and pillow rotation schedules." The bay went silent. Nalisha's head tilted. "Explain." The cubs erupted, all 3 talking over each other about Tina's pillow and sleeping arrangements and the rotation system, and how Tina fought the captain and the official schedule with drawings. With every word, more eyes turned toward Tina. Ironesh's expression went carefully blank. Likmi's tentacles vibrated with suppressed laughter. Quilnop looked like he regretted existing. Nalisha listened without interrupting. When the cubs finished, her gaze locked onto Tina with targeting precision. "You! Step forward!" Tina's survival instinct screamed, but her legs cooperated anyway. She stepped forward. Nalisha circled her slowly, close enough that Tina felt radiating heat. Being evaluated by an apex predator, deciding if you qualified as food. "You think yourself worthy of my bloodline?" "I think there's been a massive miscommunication," Tina managed. "I'm just a mechanic with a comfortable pillow. Your cubs liked it. I didn't stop them. That's everything. You allowed predator cubs into your den while vulnerable. You established territorial sharing protocols. These aren't small gestures in Ralmech culture." "I didn't know that. I was trying to be decent to homesick kids." "Decency?" Nalisha stopped. "You claim no intention beyond kindness?" "I claim exhaustion and complete ignorance about bonding rituals until I was already involved." Ironesh cleared his throat. "Matriarch, Lieutenant Tina's actions were instinctive, not calculated. The cubs initiated. She didn't reject them. Her ignorance makes her acceptance more significant." "How so?" "She didn't perform bonding for advantage. She saw distressed young beings and offered comfort. No agenda, no expectations, just availability. Show me this pillow schedule." Someone produced a data pad. The image showed Tina's door with a handwritten schedule in 3 styles, clearly collaborative. Each cub's name matched specific days. Pillin's drawings showed tiny sketches of them curled on the cartoon cat pillowcase. Nalisha studied it, made a sound between laugh and growl. My cubs invented custody agreements over a human's sleeping cushion decorated with stylized felines. It sounds weird when you say it like that, Pillin muttered. It is weird. It's also sophisticated pack dynamics most cubs don't develop until much older. Nalisha regarded Tina. They created this to avoid conflict over access to you. Prioritized sibling harmony over individual desire. Do you understand what that means? They're really committed to scheduling? It means they've bonded to you as pack, all three, equally. Rather than compete, they negotiated sharing. Her tail moved in what might be respect. That emotional maturity usually requires years of training. They developed it in weeks because the stakes were that high. I didn't mean to. Intent is irrelevant. Results matter. My cubs are healthier and more stable than since leaving home. Commander Ironesh's reports confirm this. She stepped closer. Do you want my cubs in your life, or were you being polite until you could extract yourself? Tina thought about Pillin's whispered thanks, Molak's careful permission requests, Nakri's solemn negotiations. 3 kids who chose her, who made elaborate schedules to share something that helped them feel less alone. About her own childhood, moving station to station, never having anyone stay. That pillow being her one constant in temporary everything. About maybe being just as lonely as they were. I want them in my life, Tina said quietly. I don't know what that means in your culture, or what responsibilities come with it. But yeah, they're good kids. They make me laugh. They invented a rotation schedule more organized than military operations, and they trusted me enough to be vulnerable, which is maybe the most honest thing anyone's given me. Silence filled the bay. Nalisha's expression shifted toward something like a smile. Then I offer you formal status as pack warden to my cubs. This carries weight, resources, political protection, also expectations. You'll remain accessible, guide them when asked, be part of their lives meaningfully. I'm just a mechanic. You're a mechanic who passed an instinctive test most warriors fail. You saw need and responded without calculating advantage. She glanced at her vibrating cubs. Do you accept? Tina looked at 3 hopeful faces and nervous tails. At Ironesh's tiny, encouraging nod. At Lickme, radiating smug satisfaction. I have conditions. Nalisha's ears perked. State them. Cubs finish training. I keep working as mechanic. No ceremonial nonsense interfering. And someone explains pack warden in small words before I agree to anything legally binding. Acceptable. The role is primarily emotional. You're acknowledging existing bonds and agreeing not to sever them arbitrarily. Formalizing what you've been doing, with added family protection and resources. And I just keep letting them sleep on my pillow? Essentially, though needs will evolve as they grow. Core responsibility stays the same. Be available, honest. Be the stability they chose you to represent. Tina breathed deep. Okay, yeah, I can do that. The cubs erupted, nearly bowling over Ironesh. Nalisha watched with visible affection, then turned back. One more thing. Thank you for seeing my children as children, not political assets or future warriors, just young beings needing comfort. That's more valuable than you know. They made it easy. They're good kids. They are. And now they're yours too, in ways that matter. 3 months later, the rotation schedule remained posted, now laminated and official. Tina had acquired a second pillow. Her workshop had become a gathering place for young crew needing somewhere quiet to exist without judgment. The cubs still rotated with religious dedication, but Nakri helped with inventory because pack bonding included learning family business. Moloch brought broken data pads for impromptu engineering lessons. Pillin designated herself official greeter, welcoming visitors with zero concept of personal space. Ironesh visited one evening, finding Tina surrounded by cubs and spare parts. "You've adapted well to pack warden status?" "I've adapted to chaos management. Same skill set as being a mechanic, just more teeth involved." He watched the domestic scene. "You gave them what warriors often cannot: permission to be young, space to be vulnerable, knowledge that strength doesn't mean being impenetrable." "I gave them a pillow." "You gave them yourself. There's a difference." That night, as Pillin settled with her contented sigh, Tina realized something that should have terrified her, but didn't. She'd stopped moving, stopped thinking about the next ship, next station, next temporary assignment. For the first time, she had reasons to stay. 3 reasons who rotated sleeping on cartoon cats and accidentally gave her what she'd been missing: a home, not a place; people, pack. Turns out, the scariest predators in the galaxy just needed someone who understood that comfort matters more than protocol. All it took was one tired human, one ridiculous pillow, and 3 persistent cubs who knew instinctively what most adults forget. Safety isn't about walls or weapons. It's finding someone who lets you be small when the universe feels too big. Sometimes that someone is a grease-covered mechanic with a cartoon cat pillowcase and no idea what she's doing, who chooses kindness anyway. The pillow rotation continued. The cubs grew, and Tina learned that family isn't always something you're born into. Sometimes it finds you while you're sleeping,